So, is it God's miraculous working, or is it my effort, or is it both? That's the question we'll dive into today. So, yesterday I kind of posed this question of how does this work? Like, is it my effort? Is it God's working? What's the if there's a balance? What's the balance? Or just that general question? How does this work? Like, who's responsible? Is it God's responsibility or my responsibility to make something happen? Now, there are lots of things that happen without effort, if you will, that happen by grace, if you will. Salvation, that's a free gift from God, and that's not something we earn. So we're not working to become saved, if you will. Um, there are many things that God has just given us freely, no cost, and we're not even really working towards them. They're gifts. Um, and there's things that we just have just by virtue of being sons and daughters of the King. What I want to talk about today, though, is more about specific individual goals or projects, things that the calling of God upon your life, things that He wants you to accomplish. So, we're talking essentially about missions. What is your mission, and how are you going to get that mission done? So, um, I don't know for sure if this works the same for everybody. Maybe God has different ways. But in uh, thinking about this today during worship and further this afternoon, here are some of my preliminary conclusions on the matter. So, I believe that it is my well, the first step for me is to find the heart of God on the thing, right? So, um, on a given topic or a given question, find where's God's heart on this thing? Is this actually like maybe it's something I want, but is this actually God's goal? Like, does He have that? Is this part of His plan? So find out where He's at on it, right? Now, let's say that I seek His heart and I do find that yes, this is something that God has on His heart that He wants me to do X, Y, Z. Secondly, now my job is not per se to bring XYZ about, but it is to make my whole life congruent with that thing coming about. So, in other words, um, let's say that I 100% believe that XYZ is going to come to pass. If that were the case, if I 100% believed that I was absolutely certain, how would I then, like, what actions would I take now, or how would I live my life now in light of that 100% confidence? And then my job is to essentially to live my life that way. So it's to make my whole life congruent with the outcome that I anticipate. That's in other words, I believe now I probably have had a tendency to sometimes lack faith, to be a little too left brain maybe, a little too pessimistic, and I think that so for me to drum up a feeling of faith may not always be very easy to do. But I don't believe that's necessarily my primary responsibility here. I do believe I am responsible to act in faith. So I need to take action to live my life in a way that shows faith. So it displays faith. Now, there's several things I think that happen here. One, of course, is when we have faith, it opens up the sort of the door for God to work, if you will, because it's pretty clear from the New Testament and Jesus' experience and the healings and so forth that faith was a major um, door, if you will, for the power of God to operate here on earth, so for the kingdom to come and for God's will to be done here on earth as it is in heaven. Faith was a major part of that. Secondly, when I believe that when I act in faith, there's a certain sense in which it puts a demand on the divine, if you will. It's part of the seeking and knocking, and it requires um, so so it's sort of like a practical way of like I kind of think of it as putting pressure on. I'm not sure if that's quite the right way to think. It's not pressure in some kind of manipulative sense, but as in like um, going up to a heavy object and applying a steady pressure. I don't have a really good illustration for it, but the idea I think is that there's a certain demand it places upon the divine, and there is something I think that God finds very pleasing when there are faith-filled actions to accompany our what we believe in our hearts when we get that out into actual working. So it looks like my storage running low on my phone here. I got to get this wrapped up. So lastly, having a loose hold on the outcome. So I do believe that we can use, since we're not always 100% correct on what the outcome is that God has in mind. I think we hold those a little loosely. Like, so we act in faith, but we don't. The number one thing is that relationship with God. And so we let how things go from there, how things actually work out, we hold on to that kind of loosely. And we also get some data from it. Like, is this really what God has in mind? Like, let's see, how is He working? That's a data point for us, and it can be helpful in helping us to know if we're on target. So anyway, there are some of my preliminary thoughts. Comment if you agree or disagree. Take care.